Boosters are important, but the most important thing we need to do is get more people vaccinated. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
That was President Biden today, just before getting a COVID vaccine booster shot. He is among both the nearly 67% of adult Americans who are fully vaccinated and the 83% of seniors. But his televised booster shot comes among some recent confusion over who exactly should get a booster and who shouldn't. So who better to ask than Dr. Rochelle Walensky, the director of the CDC. Dr. Walensky revised a panel recommendation last week on who should get that third shot. And we're pleased to have her with us tonight. Dr. Walensky, why go beyond that panel and recommend it for even more people?
Good evening, Joe. Thanks so much for having me. Maybe first I'll back up and say among the most important things we can do right now, and I will reiterate what President Biden said today, is get all of those people who are unvaccinated, the 70 million Americans who are unvaccinated, vaccinated. Last week, we made recommendations of who should get a booster shot to increase their protection, optimize their protection of people who are already vaccinated. And so this really pertains to people who received the Pfizer dose, the Pfizer vaccine, and these are people who are 6 months or more out of their second shot. These are people over the age of 65, those who are at high risk of severe disease by virtue of their underlying conditions, and those who are at high risk of disease by virtue of where they live and work. In terms of what happened last week, the process works like this. There's an FDA advisory panel, the FDA authorized, there's a CDC advisory panel, and the CDC makes recommendations. These were very public, scientific, transparent meetings, and I listened intently to all of them. And really what I did is I fully endorsed the recommendations of these panels, which were for people over the age of 65 and for people with underlying conditions. And then I also recommended, in line with what the FDA recommended and many of the people on the CDC advisory board, to add in those people who are at high risk by virtue of where they live and work. These are our frontline workers, our healthcare workers, our teachers who were vaccinated first.
So my question to that, doctor, is that if they need this, and why don't the rest of us need it? I guess the question is, how long does my vaccine last? Because at this point, I'm not really sure. Why do they need it and we don't, the rest of us?
So first of all, these are people among the people who are vaccinated first. They are sort of longer into their vaccine than many of the other Americans are. The second reason is because they are every day on the front lines confronting people, oftentimes with COVID, who they are taking care of. They are caring for the most vulnerable. They're often taking care of or teaching the unvaccinated in our schools. So that was the reason for the rationale right now. But what we are doing at the CDC is monitoring this in real time. And this is a really important first step to our booster program, but certainly not our last. We have many more steps to go. We will be following the data in real time and updating these guidances as we have more data.
The assumption is these folks have a waning efficacy with their vaccine. And I guess I'm just wondering, when the rest of us get to 8 months, 9 months, will we then be recommended to get this booster as well?
That would be the vision, but it's not just that they potentially have waning efficacy, but they have really high-risk exposures in real time. So people caring for patients in the ICU who have COVID, we really want to make sure that we optimize their protection. And so I do want to convey that this has really been a slow wane that we've been watching, and that our vaccines continue to work really well. In fact, we know that people who are unvaccinated still have 10 times the risk of being admitted to the hospital and 11 times the risk of dying compared to people who are vaccinated even today.
Quickly on this, if people got the Moderna vaccine, can they get the Pfizer booster, or if they got J&J?
Right now, this was recommendations for people who got a Pfizer primary series, but we see you and we hear you, all of those people who got J&J and Moderna, and we will, with urgency, address what recommendations for you as well. We anticipate that you, too, will need a boost. We are awaiting the submission of packages from the manufacturing to the FDA, and as soon as the FDA has those packages, they will address them with urgency, and we at the CDC will do the same. We're anticipating those recommendations in the coming weeks.
We want to show you some video, doctor, from Staten Island. You've probably seen this. People stormed a food court opposed to the vaccine mandate. It seems like at this point in the game, people are so dug in. Millions are not going to get the vaccine. Those who wanted it have gotten it. Those who don't want won't. And I guess the question is, with all due respect, do you think anyone is even listening anymore?
You know, we are working within communities. We're working with community-based organizations. Not everybody wants to hear the message from the CDC director, but they may hear it from people who've lost loved ones. They may hear it as the people in their community fall ill. And so our work still continues. We are not giving up on this. Certainly vaccine mandates are one way to increase vaccination. We have seen them work, and they are continuing to work. More and more people just in the last several weeks with these vaccine mandates coming to a head have been getting their first doses of vaccines.
Right. It has also put hostesses, I guess, if you will, and restaurant workers on the front line of this, being attacked essentially for asking people the proof of vaccine. This is video from New York. The New York Times also saying that these hostesses are now on the front lines in the battle against the pandemic. Is this an unfortunate byproduct, or why should, is this an unfair situation they're being put in?
You know, I think the real issue is that we are confronting one another and rather than confronting the common foe. The common foe here is the virus itself. And what we really need to do is unify against the enemy, and that enemy is the disease. And that's what I would really urge everyone to do, is recognize that there are really important ways that we can protect ourselves, our loved ones, our communities, and that is by wearing a mask and by getting vaccinated.
A couple more on the vaccine overall. Considering how many have had the vaccine and considering how many people have actually had the virus, how are we not closer to herd immunity?
You know, with a more transmissible variant, the Delta variant, the stakes that you need, the levels that you need to get to the so-called herd immunity are even higher with more transmission. And truly what we're seeing is really high rates of community spread in areas that are under-vaccinated. So if you have a really high rate of disease or vaccination in one community, it will likely not spread there. However, if you have these pockets of communities that have less vaccination, that is where wildfire and the disease will spread.
So I'm curious on a personal level, Doctor, all of the criticism over the confusion, over the mixed messaging, FDA officials have resigned over the most recent recommendations. What has been the hardest part of this job for you? The hardest part of this job is that we're not unifying together to do what we need to crush this. We have the science. We have incredible stories of people working on the front lines tirelessly to care for people. And, you know, right now it's our own will that is preventing us from getting control of this pandemic. And that has really been the most frustrating. How do you get over the finish line with these final percentages who won't get it?
Rolling up our sleeves, hard work, getting to communities, getting to trusted messengers, educating, giving people the information that they need in order to feel empowered to know that this is the right thing for them to do.
All right. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky, thank you again for your time. We appreciate it.
If you haven't been vaccinated, go get vaccinated.
All right.
Thank you so much.
That's the message. All right. No confusion.